Have you ever gotten really into a game only to watch it completely fizzle out and disappear? I know many of us in the ASIM scene have, and unfortunately this is another such case. This is the story of Home Sweet Home. It started as this incredible single-player horror game praised for its unique take on Thai mythology and for being genuinely scary. So how did its multiplayer sequel end up with literally 0 players just a few years later? This is the breakdown of the franchise's promising start, its messy jump to multiplayer, and what really happened to Home Sweet Home. A lot of you have been requesting I cover Home Sweet Home Survive, but here I'm going to take that one step further. We're going to be looking at both of the Home Sweet Home ASIM titles, Survive and Online, and look at why they were buried in the graveyard of attempted ASIM games. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying my videos and want to help spread them around, please consider liking the video. Also, if you're on mobile, you can swipe left on the comment box to hype it up. It really does help a ton, and I love seeing you all enjoy my content. Also, super quick before we start, I want to drop a very quick thank you to my members for allowing me to donate another round to my local animal shelters. More on this at the end of the video, but as I've said before, 100% of my membership income is donated to animals, and we were just able to drop off our second round of donations totaling almost $450, so thank you all so much. The story of Home Sweet Home doesn't start with a multiplayer lobby, but in the quiet, terrifying halls of a single-player game. First released for PC in 2017, the original Home Sweet Home was a breath of fresh air in a genre dominated by Western ghost stories and zombies. Developed by the Thai studio Yggdrasil Group, the game was a bold and unapologetic celebration of its own culture. Players stepped into the shoes of Tim, a man searching for his missing wife, only to find himself trapped in a nightmare world, blending reality with dark spiritual realms. To me, it gave a creepy Silent Hill energy with a Thai twist. What made it so special wasn't just the jump scares, it was the atmosphere, steeped in authentic Thai folklore. The game's main villain, a haunting female spirit, wasn't just some generic ghost. Her design and her movements, her motivations were all rooted in specific Thai myths. The environments, from creepy traditional Thai houses to otherworldly locations, felt culturally specific and deeply unsettling. Yggdrasil Group, a company that actually started in visual effects, poured a ton of effort into getting this right. The game wasn't a huge blockbuster, but it did become a cultural darling and a cult classic of sorts. In fact, this is a bit of a spoiler, but it's currently performing better than both of its sequels on Steam. It built a loyal fan base that loved its unique identity. Horror fans were suddenly introduced to a whole new world of terrors, rooted in Buddhist mysticism and Southeast Asian ghost stories. It was a cultural export in a medium where Thailand wasn't a major player, and in that regard, it was a pretty massive success. A sequel, Home Sweet Home Episode 2, followed in 2019, continuing Tim's story and expanding the lore. The future of the franchise looked brighter than ever. Fans were hooked and ready for another terrifying dive into this unique world. Yggdrasil had done something great, created a horror IP that was both culturally important and genuinely scary. So what was the next logical step? In their eyes, it was to expand, and that's when they decided to jump into one of the most competitive and brutal genres in gaming, asymmetrical multiplayer. Riding a wave of goodwill from the single-player games, the Yggdrasil Group announced Home Sweet Home Survive. The concept was pretty familiar. If you've ever played a game like Dead by Daylight, it was a 4 vs 1 asymmetrical horror game. 4 visitors would enter a supernatural realm to perform rituals and escape, all while being hunted by one player controlling a powerful specter. The main selling point, again, was the theme. The specters were pulled straight from Thai mythology, and their rituals involved complex cultural rites. For the 4 visitors, the goal was twofold. The primary objective was to find ritual items like incense and nails from special chests, bring them to an altar, and then pray to complete the objective, which included facing down skill checks, as all ASIMs tend to do. After 3 rituals were done, escape portals would appear. But there was a second, more aggressive way to win. You could actually kill the specter. Completing rituals would weaken the specter's defenses, allowing a coordinated team to fight back with collected weapons and potentially win by force. For the Spectre player, the goal was simple: stop the visitors. Each Spectre had unique abilities like teleporting or laying traps, plus a universal stealth mode to move invisibly and spot survivor auras. In theory, it was a tense hunt. The Spectre had to patrol objectives, predict survivor movements, and strategically use their powers to corner and eliminate them. The problem was, this dynamic existed only on paper. Home Sweet Home Survive launched into early access on Steam in March 2021. At first, the reception was mixed but hopeful. Players loved the incredible atmosphere, but there were immediate glaring red flags. From day one, players reported that the game just felt clunky. The controls weren't responsive enough, and the Spectre, the star of the show, often felt underpowered or frustrating to control. Despite hitting a respectable peak of over 5,500 players in its first month, the foundation of Home Sweet Home Survive had some serious settling issues. An early access launch is supposed to be a time for growth, but for Home Sweet Home Survive, this period became a long, frustrating struggle. The initial excitement quickly curdled into frustration, especially around game balance. An asymmetrical game lives or dies on making both roles feel fair. In Survive, the consensus was clear: the game is heavily survivor-sided. The Spectre, playing against coordinated teams, felt like a nightmare, and not in a fun way. Visitors had access to a flood of items, like holy water for binding, traps, and weapons to stun or damage the Spectre. Experienced teams could stun-lock the Spectre, chaining their items together so the killer player was left unable to move or fight back. It felt awful. New Spectre players were constantly bullied by teams who knew how to exploit the clunky hit detection and nimble survivor movement, making it impossible to land a hit. This created a vicious cycle. Nobody wanted to play as the killer, which meant longer wait times for everyone else. Feels like I've said this exact sentence in most of my other failed ASIM videos, and it frustrates me every single time. From the visitor's side, even a victory could feel hollow. While the idea of performing rituals sounded neat, the actual gameplay was often a repetitive fetch quest. The objectives were confusing, and the core loop amounted to finding an item, bringing it to an altar, and holding a button while hoping the unreliable audio cues would warn you of the Spectre's approach. Instead of a tense cat-and-mouse chase, matches often devolved into chaotic, clumsy encounters where the clunky mechanics got in the way. It felt more like a Roblox game in its handling, which is a rough place to be as a studio. Community forums were flooded with feedback. Yggdrasil did release updates, but they often felt like one step forward, two steps back. A patch might fix one bug, but introduce two more. And that brings us to a pivotal and damaging decision. In August 2022, Yggdrasil announced that they were quote-unquote temporarily shutting down the North American and European servers to prepare for the game's full release. For players in those regions, it was pretty insulting. The move fractured the internal community and signaled that Survive was in serious trouble. When your multiplayer game is just getting started, the very last thing you want to do is prevent a ton of people from being able to play. I'm looking at you, Video Horror Society. But that's the decision they made, and they had to live with it. While players waited for the promised full release of Survive, Yggdrasil was working on something else entirely. Instead of fixing the original game, they decided to replace it. In June 2023, the company launched a new separate title, Home Sweet Home Online. This wasn't just an update, it was a full-on successor that would make Survive obsolete. Think Overwatch 2 to Overwatch. Player data and purchases were transferred, but this was a new game. The decision was, to put it mildly, controversial. The few loyal players left felt abandoned. They had invested time and money into a game that was now being tossed aside for a new free-to-play model. As well, the monetization in Online immediately set off alarm bells, as the game was loaded with pricey cosmetic items. Online wasn't just a rebrand, it introduced a brand new 4 vs 4 battle mode, alongside the classic 4 vs 1 survive mode. This new mode completely changed the formula. It pitted two teams of 4 visitors against each other. Both teams would race to complete rituals to earn a Warden Soul, which allowed one player on their team to transform into a powerful Warden. That player would then hunt the other team's visitors to score points. Your team's Warden had draining health, so your fellow visitors had to keep doing rituals to support them. This shifted the experience from the tense horror survival to a competitive, team-based action game. The goal was probably to attract a wider audience, but it just diluted the game's core identity and split the already dwindling player base. The launch of Home Sweet Home Online on June 22, 2023 was a disaster. It was delayed, and when it finally went live, the servers were riddled with crashes and lag, forcing them offline for maintenance after just a few hours. Players who had waited patiently were met with an unstable game, and the Steam reviews quickly tanked. The attempt to reboot the franchise had stumbled at its first hurdle, alienating core fans and failing to make a good impression. The goodwill built by the single-player games was very quickly evaporating. The fallout from the messy launch of Home Sweet Home Online was swift. The player numbers honestly tell the whole story. Home Sweet Home Survive, the original multiplayer title, was officially retired and taken offline for good on September 1st, 2024. By then, its player count had long since flatlined to zero. The game that had once peaked at over 5,500 players was officially dead. The hope was that online would be a fresh start. For a brief moment, it seemed possible. The game launched on June 2023 and hit a peak of just over 2,500 players. It was less than half of Survive's peak, but it was something. That being said, the revival was incredibly short-lived. The buggy launch, controversial monetization, and lingering gameplay issues were a fatal cocktail. The player count for Home Sweet Home Online dropped dramatically. Within months, the numbers had plummeted. By early 2025, the game that was supposed to save the franchise was regularly seeing daily player counts in the single digits, before finally hitting and staying at zero. The servers are technically still online, but there's nobody home. The journey that began with a unique cultural vision ended in a silent, empty lobby. The developers had made a series of critical mistakes. They split their community, angered their most dedicated fans with a greedy-feeling monetization model, and never managed to solve the fundamental gameplay problems that plagued the experience from the start. It sounds all too familiar. So let's pretend to be morticians and take a look at the body of Home Sweet Home. What really happened to this franchise? It's a classic story of lost potential and a cautionary tale for any developer trying to turn a beloved single-player IP into a live service game. The failure wasn't one single thing, but a cascade of poor decisions that compounded over time. First, and most importantly, they never nailed the core gameplay. An asymmetrical horror game has to be balanced, responsive, and fun for both sides. Survive launched with clunky controls and a balance that heavily favored survivors, a problem it never truly fixed. This led to the second major error, abandoning Survive for online. This move was a strategic disaster. It fractured the player base and burned the goodwill of early supporters who had paid for the game that was now being left to die. It created confusion and resentment, and the franchise never recovered. Third, the monetization for online was a huge miscalculation. Shifting to a free-to-play model filled with expensive cosmetics felt cynical, especially to a community that had already felt neglected. It created the perception that the developers were more interested in cash than quality. And finally, there was a persistent problem with communication and technical stability. From the temporary server shutdowns to the buggy delayed launch of online, the developers consistently failed to manage expectations and deliver a polished product. Each misstep eroded trust and pushed more players away. The unique time mythology that made the original game so special just wasn't enough to save the multiplayer sequels from the specter of unfilled potential. The story of Home Sweet Home's multiplayer saga is a sad one, especially for fans who saw so much promise in its unique world. But I want to know what you think. Were you a player of Survive or online? What was your final straw that made you uninstall or leave the game? Let me know down in the comments. Ultimately, the legacy of Home Sweet Home is a paradox. On one hand, it's a shining example of how to bring a unique culture to horror gaming. On the other, it's a grim warning about the perils of the live service model. The single-player games remain terrifying classics, but the multiplayer servers are a silent testament to a great idea that just couldn't stick the landing. Now, like my other videos, on a much happier note to lift your spirits, I want to bring up my membership program. Now, if you enjoy my content, I would love it if you joined our community with a subscription. You could also go as far as to join my members, where I donate 100% of all membership income to my local animal shelters. Like I mentioned in the intro, I'm thrilled to announce that we just made our second donation to one of my local shelters, sponsoring 4 more older cats for adoption and totaling our donations to over $400. If you're unaware, sponsoring means that the cat's adoption fees have been paid by us, removing one more barrier to the loving cats getting their forever home. A huge thank you to all my members that could help me make this happen. I'm more than thankful to every single one of you. It really means more than I can put into words. Like I said, if you want to join them and help make a small difference, as well as get a private chat channel in my Discord and a shout out in all of my videos, consider joining today. But that's all for me. Another ASIM covered, another gravestone finished. I look forward to having you all along for the next one. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I probably won't see you at our Home Sweet Home.